So, congratulations everyone for making it to the finals. I'm looking forward to being a part of helping to judge the contributions of this year. Before this presentation, I'm just curious though, how many of you have heard of my company, Prezi? That's great. That's most of the people. For those of you who haven't heard anything about it, I'll tell you a brief story of what Prezi is, but also how we about 2-3 years ago ended up doing something that I think you guys in this room are considering doing now. And so Prezi is a presentation tool. This is a picture from Ted. Ted is actually an investor in Prezi, but Prezi is now being used by older, by younger, and if you are uncertain about how to do beautiful presentations, then there's actually a whole lot of books out there on the market today. In fact, I don't think there is an Italian book yet out on Prezi, so if you need a new business idea after this competition, then please write the next Italian Prezi book. But Prezi is not just being used for presentations, it's also a collaboration tool. We realized it's being spread out over 2 continents that we actually needed to collaborate somehow using Prezi. And it's nice to see that it's not just us, but also I believe these are children in Singapore, and you can do it in the same room or different rooms. And then I can't avoid showing you one of these nice examples as well. This is from Japan. I believe the first Prezi opening that I've ever seen. So you can do all sorts of stuff with Prezi, and we got started with this project in Budapest, in Hungary, back in 2008. We launched the product in 2009, and by January this year, we had passed 8 million users. And what is different about Prezi then? Well, as you've seen, it's one large canvas where you arrange all of your ideas. And when we ask our users why they like using Prezi, well, they say it's more of like a visual journey through space, which helps them to figure out where are they coming from and where are they going. How does my ideas connect together with each other? In fact, audiences say similar things. So, why do we do this? Well, we believe that this space can be a much more fun and engaging way of arranging ideas. And the question is then, having started in Budapest, Hungary, we built a great team over there. Why would we then consider opening up offices here in San Francisco? In fact, why are you considering to open up offices here in San Francisco? That's a really important question to answer, I think. In our case, it had all to do with this vision. This vision essentially says that we are a customer, an end user, and a consumer product primarily. But it didn't have to be that way. In fact, when we got started with Prezi, we had this really cool zooming technology. And it wasn't certain that we were going to go the consumer way. In fact, there were hardware manufacturers who were interested. They wanted to change their OS. We had television channels who wanted to communicate with their customers using this nice zooming surface. But the reason why we ended up with this product and with this vision was because me and my co-founders in Budapest, we said, well, what we're really passionate about is to help people like you share ideas and not so much help a hardware manufacturer communicate with their customers, and that's it. So I think it's really important that as you consider, where you're taking your business, not just geographically, but, in a longer or in a broader picture, what it is that motivates you to do what you do. Because that will then hold the key to why you need to do certain things. So for example, we needed to open up offices in San Francisco. Why? Can you guess? Can anyone guess?
Talent.
No.
The environment. The idea around the environment, developing the
Not the environment.
Money.
Distribution is the closest guess here. So here's one problem we ran into. We started charging for Prezi in euros, and we very soon discovered that American customers or consumers were not very comfortable with paying in euros. However, European consumers were very comfortable with paying in dollars. So what did we do? We just we changed the euro sign to a dollar sign, and all of a sudden, we were doing much better in the US. And there are many small details like this. For example, back in Hungary, there is actually a talent. You're right. I'm going to do a talent example. It was hard to communicate in a native language from Hungary in English. And you know, there is an overarching idea here is that if you are a consumer company like Prezi, what is the biggest consumer market in the world? Yeah, it's the United States. And if you want to build a global consumer company, then the United States market is your most important stepping stone in going global. We could not go global by only covering Hungary, right? It's as simple as that. So once we had decided that we wanted to go global on a consumer play, and we identified that US was our biggest market that we needed to be successful on, what did we do? Well, we found this guy who's a VC. He's a Danish guy, but he's also started several companies here in the US. And the great thing about him is that he understood both the challenges and the opportunities of opening up business in US. So having great support in your endeavor to do something like this, I think is really great. And then you might have the money. You can get that from the US as well, of course. But does that mean that you're then a true American? Well, I thought I knew everything there was to know about US. I had watched television shows, listened to music, read books. I mean, how difficult could it be? I spoke English, you know. But what I realized was that all of these things, learning English and seeing the movies, did not help me in understanding and learning about how to run a business in the US. So again, there's a whole lot of small details here that you need to go through a learning curve. For example, I don't know if you've had the opportunity now to look at legal agreements, where somebody mentioned the legal environment, and while it is extremely developed in the area, it is developed also in the sense of how many sentences you end up in an American legal document. They tend to be about 3 to 5 times what I was used to. For example, and those are things you need to get used to and learn how to interpret to be successful here. Hiring is another thing, but I'm not even going to go to that. I'm going to try to leave a few questions, time for questions if you guys want to ask about that, though. So yes, there's definitely a learning. And what is the shortcut? There's one shortcut that I want to leave you with here if you do decide to open up operations in the US. I would highly recommend you to very quickly get a very experienced office manager who knows a little bit about HR, a little bit about running business, so you can jumpstart all of those learnings that you guys have to go through. So once you've done all of that, what can the setup look like? Well, in the case of Prezi, this is what it looks like. We started over here in Budapest, in Hungary, and then we set up offices in San Francisco, not in New York, although there's a little bit less of a time difference, and that's great. But most of the potential partners and competitors as well are here, so that's why we decided on this. And this actually sets you up also not just to create this global consumer play. Prezi is being used in all of these countries except the gray ones today. And the blue countries represent countries where we have employees from today. So Prezi, I think, is a global company, not just in the sense of who the users are, but also where our employees come from. We're 60 people today, and we represent 14 countries, something that I'm incredibly proud of. And by the way, the vast majority of those are actually still in Budapest, because what we have here in the US is more or less a marketing arm. So, once you have this set up, you're 60 people and you're spread out globally, what can you do to sort of make this setup work? One of the things that I've spent a lot of time on is actually developing the company culture. And that company culture thing is something that's very hard to define. There's a ton of books written about it if you're interested. But it's essentially the thing that makes people feel at home regardless of if they happen to be in the Budapest office or the San Francisco office. And it's also the thing that keeps us together, you know, when we're facing challenges. So here's an example of an activity that we do every year to develop our company culture. We go to the poor outskirts of Budapest and renovate gypsy families' houses. And it has been really the best form of team building we ever do. It's a place where we are not just challenged in new roles and new skills that we don't have, but where we also have proof for working together means that we can change the lives of people on a long-term basis. So I would recommend you guys to think about, you know, what kind of activities can you identify with and help these people come together, regardless of culture or what office they happen to work from. Then there is just a whole lot of practical stuff, a few tips. We established a fellowship program from day one of opening up our San Francisco office. What does that mean? Well, I simply took the inspiration from something that the medical doctors do. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but they actually spend time in other hospitals to learn from each other. So what we do is that we sponsor everyone in the company to travel to the other office and spend time there to build their network, to understand the other office. And this is something that they can do pretty much freely. And then, of course, the weekly one-hour meeting where we are all gathered regardless of where we happen to be on the globe, and where we show Prezis to each other. It's usually just 2 minutes each. We call it show and tell, and people can show some of their accomplishments. It helps us to build the community. And in the end of that session, people can ask me questions about any worries or anxieties that they happen to have. And it's just a great way of keeping the company together. So the last thing I want to leave you with here, really, you know, as you are considering about opening up offices in a foreign country, is really to always go back to that question, who are you and why are you doing what you're doing? And if the answer is that you need to open up offices somewhere else, then, you know, you should absolutely do that. You should do what it takes to make your company successful. And there will be challenges along the way, but none of it is not overcomable if you have a clear goal in mind. So that's what I wanted to say to you guys today. And if you have any questions, do we have time for that? Because I know we're a little bit late.
10 minutes of question.
Yeah?
Something prepared. You want a chair?
Sure.
You know, first of all, one thing that I want to say is that one of the great things about being in this area is that you can do things like this. Like, Peter had never heard of me. I sent him an email 2 weeks ago and said, hey, do you want to join us and give a presentation at our event? He had never heard about Mind the Bridge. He, by the way, just raised $14 million in capital, and sometimes in Europe people tend to feel like they're too rich and famous to do stuff like this, and he replied back right away, and here he is. So that is one of the great things about being in this area. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions on behalf of some of our startups, and then you guys can ask questions as well. One of the challenges when you move like you did, you're the CEO of the company, you take some of the vision out of what is your main office, which is in Budapest, and so you have this guy that's now far away from most of the internal action. Yeah. You know, you're in the action because your competitors, your partners are here, but you're far away from the internal action, and that creates all kinds of issues, and I wanted to ask you, what are you doing internally to overcome that?
I think that, I feel like if I only spend my time here, I wouldn't be a good CEO. So I actually travel back and forth quite a lot. I am trying to cut down on that now because, after a while your brain just gets wacko when you keep, shifting time zones like that. But having a clear vision does not mean that you have to talk about it actually every day. If the vision is clear and people understand it, then you can go a couple of weeks without reminding people about it. So I think that is not necessarily the main reason why always be engaged with every person every day. And in fact, as a CEO, if some of you are CEOs of your company, there comes a stage where you have to sort of lift your eyes and then start looking at the bigger picture. Okay, how do I make sure that my company scales? And that's one of your main or most important jobs besides talking about the vision. And that's something that I'm incredibly busy with now. So I don't think I answered your question with
I think you did.
A plain yes or no. But
No, I think you did. I think you nailed it. Setting the vision and where you don't have to be there if you do a great job at that. And, the other thing that I wanted to ask you was about company culture, because it's very difficult when you're so far away. And you already talked about that, which is a great example of how they do something that has nothing to do with Prezi at all to set that, to create that culture. And another thing that I wanted to ask you, if you had to pick one thing that you believe is really the, that adds value of being a U.S. plus Europe company, because we, a lot of us here are specifically with a foot in the U.S., a foot in Europe, and do you believe that adds value? And if it, what's the one thing that you believe, is particularly good about that?
Yeah. So I think there is no one way. I mean, that's why I want to emphasize again, always looking at, where are you wanting to take your company? Because in our case, we needed the critical mass of United States to be successful as a consumer company. But not all businesses are consumer plays, and some consumer plays are actually, limited to certain countries. I mean, my former startup, I was doing comparisons on hospital performances, and that was only in Sweden. And, that was geographically well contained, and there was never really an idea to do anything different. So it's obvious, but it wouldn't have helped anything to open up offices in US with that one. So I can't tell you if opening up offices in the US will add value or not. Only you can decide that based on what your goals are. And if a presence is needed here, then, by all means, you should absolutely do it. There's challenges to it. You're going to have organizational challenges. You're going to spend a lot of time on planes, and you're going to get very tired because you have to get up early in the morning or be up late in the evening to have conference calls. But there's nothing impossible about it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because Silicon Valley is getting a little bit too sexy in Italy, where that's the only place that you can think of, but it might not be the right place for you. Yeah, good. There you go.
Hi, Daniele Alberti, CEO of Vincer. Which is the secret sauce that you use to grow so fast and so well? Okay, of course, it's the product, but how you use this product to go so fast in distribution channel to reach this kind of super great results?
Yeah, you already answered my question. There is no secret sauce besides the product. I mean, what we focus on is just building a nice experience, and Prezi is spreading today virally. It's people like yourselves in here. If you have a good experience with Prezi, then you might recommend it to other people, and that's it. No other. We do a little bit of partnering, but it's really minuscule. It doesn't show in the numbers.
Is it 20,000 a day that I read, new users?
You might have read that, yeah.
All right.
Hi, I was just curious. I'm Charles Versace. What was so compelling to your investors that they were going to shell out $14 million? What's from their perspective? What is it that you think was really the grabber, if you will?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, again, I'm sorry that I can't say anything more aha-like than the product, but I think first and foremost the product. And second of all, I mean, I think that there is a fundamental shift going on in the productivity market as such. It used to be that productivity tools were packaged goods that you went into a store and you bought and then you installed onto your computer. For large corporations, it was a system administrator that set it up for everyone in the company. But today, if you are a web-savvy person, you have a ton of options to choose from. You're not contained to that tool that happens to reside on your computer. And without that, a company like Prezi would have never been able to grow as fast as it has. I mean, just imagine the logistics of trying to, send out CDs or whatever to stores. I mean, yes, there is, a fundamental change going on in the way that people relate to their work and the tool that they use. And that allows a small company coming from Budapest to compete with Microsoft, Apple, Google, as long as you have a good product.
I think we're done, guys. Sorry, but we're running a little bit late. So thanks, Peter. Thanks for coming. It's great having you here.